Good morning. Welcome back to Devlog 1 of my 2D shooter that I'm making in Unity. This is a little bit confusing because this isn't actually the first video I've made on this game. I started this game actually quite a while ago, pretty much at the beginning of my game dev journey. So I made the original video, Devlog 0, which if you haven't watched that, you should probably go check that out first. I'll have the link in the description. But for those of you who haven't already seen it and are too stubborn to go back and watch it, I'll give you a quick little recap. The video covered all the work that I'd done to that point so I could start working on devlogs, like this one. I've written a rudimentary player movement and a pretty robust shooting system that could handle pretty much all types of weapons. With this and grenades in, it was time to tackle some harder problems. The biggest being the enemy AI, which I got a pretty good system set up for that. And that's pretty much where I'm at, so let's get started with Devlog 1. First of all, I'd like to introduce the first of the two themes of this video, and that's being the automation of development. But what does that mean? Well, that's just simplifying the process for me. Instead of actually dragging and dropping the variables across things, why not write the code in a way where it just automatically adjusts itself? Simple, right? And it actually makes working on the game so much easier. So with that out of the way, what did I actually work on? Well, I started with trying to do a little bit of work in the animation system, and it just drove me absolutely crazy. I lost it. I was done with dealing with the absolute stupid web of nonsense that doesn't work half the time, so I decided just not to deal with it and write my own animation manager system. Instead of dealing with dumb, nonsensical transitions, I handled it all in smart, sensical code. I can't explain how much of a better challenge this was. Unity's built-in animation system is absolutely horrible and it doesn't take much to figure out that, so I'm glad I moved on from it. Next on the list was a real feature of the game. I decided it was time to somewhat make an objective into the game and set up the scores for the game. I tried to set up a pretty robust system that would hopefully work for a couple of different game modes and situations. First, I set up what I think is the base game mode, with that being Team Deathmatch. Everyone knows what that is, and it was pretty simple to add. 2 teams, and whoever gets X amount of kills first wins. Pretty easy. After I got this added, I realized that the way I was seeing who people could shoot was quite convoluted, so time to return back to our theme of automation. I made the weapons check what layer they were in and automatically know what values to assign themselves. This was going to work for almost any game mode I added and made adding in different amounts of enemies and teammates super easy. With this little bit of automation out of the way, it was time to turn back to the scoring system. I had the team scoring out of the way, but what about personal scores? I knew I was going to have to figure this out sooner than later, so why not start now? I made a dictionary that stored every player's kills and their deaths, so when someone was killed, it would automatically look up the value and set the score. I then set up some UI stuff to see how this was working, and it just wouldn't work. Like, no matter how hard I tried. Slightly infuriating, but I kept going back to the code until I finally found the issue, and you never guessed what it was. Instead of writing get component in children, I wrote get component. A 2-word difference that caused me probably hours of times and headaches. But I guess that's basically the gist of programming, so I guess it's what I signed up for. This is when we start to introduce the second and probably most prevalent theme of this video. I was playtesting the game for just chilling around and taking a break from coding when it finally hit me. This doesn't feel good. I don't enjoy playing the game. I needed to fix that. But where do I even start? Why does the game feel bad in the first place? And more importantly, how can I fix it? The first problem that I looked at was the player movement. It felt too floaty and just wasn't that much fun to run around with. If you hit a bump in the ground, the player would go flying, which is totally not realistic or desired. But how do I go about fixing that? First, I tried playing with a bunch of different colliders and materials. I wanted to see if I could make it so that the player stuck and interacted with the ground better without affecting things like its interactions with the wall. After a bit of fiddling, I found a solution that I was pretty happy with. Instead of the 2 colliders that I was working with up until this point, I added a small third one that was grippier and directly interacted with the ground. That was already feeling quite a bit better. With that down, it was time to tackle the problem of the movement feeling floaty. First off, I changed how the game was taking care of the player's movement and velocity and tried to make it feel more weightier and solid. With that out of the way, it was just time to worry about the jump. I decided to have it so when the player is grounded or on the ground, that the gravity on him was actually higher, so that way he'd stick to the ground better, but then lower the gravity scale once he jumped so he still had a big jump. This was probably the biggest change that I did to the player controller, and it made it feel so much better. Okay, now that I was done with the controller rewrite for the player, I was done, right? Wrong! I had to completely rewrite everything that I had changed in the user-controlled player over to the AI-controlled player. Yay! So much fun! It wasn't actually that hard. I already did most of the hard thinking when I wrote it the first time, so it's just applying more of the same stuff there, and I finished it up pretty quickly. Conveniently, once I changed this already fixed a couple of bugs that I was having with stuttery AI movement and aiming, which is a win in my bugs. Now with the player movement feeling good, it was time to turn the attention towards the shooting to make that feel good. I had already had some good visuals in the game with some big ol' muzzle flashes, and yes, to Muano H, yes, it has some post-processing and bloom, but it still doesn't feel that impactful. It feels like you're shooting a laser beam that has no weight to it. So how better to fix that than by adding a little bit of screen shake? So the first attempt was actually quite hilarious. As I was coding it, when I tested it out, I just sat there laughing. The second attempt was much better and really showed what I wanted. I still had to tone it down a bit, but it really made the shooting feel so much better. You really have the thud of the gun shooting, and it added so much to the experience. With feeling this, I decided to double down this and continue on adding it to everything. Next up was how the enemies shooting and grenades shook the player's screen. I decided with both that based on how close to the player the explosion or shot was how much it would shake the screen. It was pretty easy to add in and looked absolutely amazing. The game felt so much better. It was really a world of difference. I would find myself just playing the game because it felt good. With that out of the way, it was time to return to our theme of automation. I was doing some work on the guns and the shooting, and it was kind of a pain in the butt. Anything I changed with on the gun, I'd have to do that for all of the different instances of that gun. I knew I was going to have to do this eventually, but I jumped into the world of scriptable objects. Scriptable objects are basically just a container for data, or in my case, variables that hold the gun stats. It wasn't that bad to code up, and it saved me a bunch of work. With this in, I thought, why stop there? Why not take it further and store all of the weapons in a prefab? I saved all of the guns in one object and instantiated it once for every person in the match. Super nice. Now if I made a change to any of the guns, I can save that to the prefab and it'll be the same for all other players and guns. This will and already has saved me a ton of work. With that all done, I wanted to finish up some visual effects. I played around a bit with the bloom and lighting and was pretty happy with it. I think I need to do a complete art redo, so if you have any suggestions or ideas, let me know in the comments below. Another part of making a game feel good is it not feeling bad. And bugs make the game feel bad. So here's a short summary of all the major bugs that I've fixed during the development. I fixed a bug where you could reload, shoot, and hold a grenade all at the same time. I fixed AI jitter, and I fixed a bug with the weapon rotation that totally didn't take me way too long to fix. And once I finished that up, I totally didn't have the same bug on the AI, and I totally did not fix it. Anyways, that's basically all the progress I've made so far. I didn't do a ton of work in this devlog, but a lot of it was the less glorious work and needed to be done eventually. Nothing changed too much visually in the game, but I had to catch up on a lot of technical debt that had been piled up with this long of development. I did start this game right at the beginning of my game dev, and my coding skills have come a long way from when I first started this project. The screen shake I added really gave the game so much more to it. If anyone has any other ideas that you think would help the game, then please let me know. I'm more than open for suggestions. Next time, I'll probably work on the UI, then some more on the visuals. Now that the game feels good, it needs to look good as well. Anyways, thanks to all of you that have stayed this long. It means a lot. If you liked this video, then like and subscribe. If you didn't, don't. Or whatever. I'm not your mom. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.